Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week I had farmers sharing some of their serious concerns about renewable energy projects. Wind and solar energy companies, through unregistered landmen, are approaching these farmers and trying to lock in their property for renewable energy production on their land. Many of these farmers are being simply shown the rich lease payments and royalties, and they are not being given the basic information as to how these leases work or of any of the possible negative consequences of these lucrative leases. To the Minister of Energy, what's being done to protect farmers from what have been called terrible contracts?
Honourable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe I was asked this question last week and similar answer. We know that there are many farmers and landowners who are excited about the possibilities and opportunities for wind and solar. We've had groups of folks going around the province to advise that there is help available through the AUC or through the Farmers Advocate. We have some resources out that is a nice little checklist of what they need to know before entering into contracts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that negotiating a lease with a renewable energy company is not the same as negotiating with an oil and gas industry, and given that there is no right of entry or expropriation process for renewable energy in Alberta, which means that farmers approached by a wind or solar company have the right to say no to a wind turbine or solar panels installed on their land. However, once a contract is signed, their neighbours have no right to stop that same company from building infrastructure on their land to tie the project to the grid. To the Minister, what's being done to ensure that these hardworking Albertans are informed of their rights prior to signing any contracts?
Again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I mentioned, there are some resources available through the AUC and through the Farmers Advocate, or have them contact my office. We can walk them through the process. I would say that if you know your neighbours are planning and have interest in that you also as a neighbour find out what your rights. But to be clear, contracts do not need to be signed, nor do landowners have to take a project onto their property.
Thank you. Second supplementary.
I think this would be a great place for a wind turbine, Mr. Speaker. Given that, unlike oil and gas leases, landowners involved with renewable energy projects are not able to appeal to the Surface Rights Board if the developer stopped paying its leases. And given that there is not currently any orphan program that would fund reclaiming old turbines and solar panels in the event a company became insolvent, and given that people have been told by legal counsel that these are the worst contracts they have ever seen, to the Minister of Energy, has this government put ideology and the NDP worldview ahead of protecting property rights in Alberta?
Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, there are resources available, but in addition to those resources, I would suggest, if people are interested, talk to the County of Vulcan, Cypress, Stettler, Town of Carmangay, Pincher Creek, Pincher MD, and others. Those are all areas that have these projects, and Mr. Speaker, they all have very positive things to say and would be glad to provide advice on future projects.